Hi, today I want to show you how you can use server-side rendering instead of Nordcraft to build SEO-friendly dynamic pages. It's super simple, so let's get right started with that. First of all, as you can see, I'm inside of Nordcraft here instead of my project. And what we want to do is you want to create a dynamic page. So I'm going to create a new page. I'm going to call that post. And we're just going to create this post page. Now, obviously, we want to add a main element that is the way how we structure that page. We want to make it go width 100%, height 100%, and then we're just going to set a background of white. Now, it's very important that we make this page actually work dynamic. So we go on this page section here and we can add another path. And that will be the slug of our dynamic post. And because this will be dynamic, I'm going to check this parameter checkbox, which will make it dynamic. Now I can use a sample value. I already have a database with blog posts, and each of those blog posts will have a slug, so I can just copy the slug for sample purposes, put this inside of here as a test value, just like this, and now we already have this dynamically set up inside of here. Now we want to set up our first API by clicking on the plus to set up our API. So let's go to our API endpoint. I already have a simple API endpoint that is receiving a slug passed into the URL, and then it's getting that blog post, as you can see right inside of here, and returning us the JSON. So I'm going to copy the URL. I'm going to go inside of Nordcraft. I'm going to paste this right inside of here and click on continue. Now, as you can see, it's nicely set up. I can call this blog post API if I want, just like that. Beautiful, so blog post API. And now what I can do is I need to make this parameter here, the slug, dynamic. It needs to come from the page path. So let's go on FX so we can make this dynamic. And let's take this here from URL parameters slug, which will now take the dynamic slug. And as you can see, when we run this, we're now loading our blog post, just like this, and we're getting the data dynamically. If you want server-side rendering, you need to make sure that auto fetch is turned on, and that you go to advanced, and that server-side fetching is turned on. This is server-side rendering, so server-side fetching on, and auto fetch needs to also be on. Perfect. So now we're loading the data. When we reload the page in the editor, you will see that the API automatically will fetch the data. So now this gives us a CMS that we can build in any backend, Supabase, Xano, whatever you want to do, Contentful, if you want to pay $300 a month for the same thing that you can get somewhere else for way cheaper. And we have server-side rendering. Now we actually need to render the elements and set that up dynamically inside of the page. So let's take a look at that. What we want to do is we're loading a beautiful image, so let's actually make good use of that and put an image element inside of here. And let's wrap this in an element that will be a div, so we can kind of like adjust the image. Also, we have this main section inside of here. I'm just going to wrap this inside of a div, and that div will have a maximum width to just make the UI nicer. So I'm going to add a maximum width of, I usually like to do 80 rem. Perfect, so it should max out at some point. Okay, and then we go on the main part and we're going to center that. And then we go at this element here with a maximum width, and we want to make sure that the width of this element is 100%. And then we're going to give it a height also of 100% so it stretches out. So with this maximum width, as you can see, if we go on extensive screens, it will stop at some point stretching out, and for the other parts it will be responsive. That's how you build responsive interfaces in Nordcraft. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the thumbnail. So the thumbnail should have 16 to 9 is a little bit much, but let's do like a 20 to 5 aspect ratio for the thumbnail. And then I'm going to take the image element, give it width 100%, height 100%. Now I'm going to make it dynamic using the source attribute. So we go on source, and we're going to now take this API data that we're dynamically loading using server-side rendering. And I'm going to go on data, and now I'm going to take image URL. And now, as you can see, I'm setting the image just like this. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that this format is appropriate to what we have set up. It seems like the format disappeared. So how about we extend this and make this again 20 by 5. Okay, and let's click outside of there. And then we need to probably apply that format on the image again. That would make more sense. So let's expand that on size. Yeah, and let's do 20 by 5. Okay, perfect. And then let's remove that format from this element here. Beautiful. So now we have this image. It's kind of stretched together. So we can just go here and we can do object fit cover. And now, as you can see, we'll load the image. I should have probably used a more high quality image, but you get the idea. So now we're loading our thumbnail. So now once we have this loaded, I can go inside of this element here. That is essentially the part of the application. And I can add an article tag. This is essentially, representing the blog post usually used for that. So I'm going to do width 100%, and height will be fit content so we can appropriately scroll. And inside of here, I'm going to give it 1 rem side padding and 1 rem top and bottom padding. And then inside of here, I'm going to add my paragraph. And that paragraph will now render the text dynamically. So I'm going to go on FX, and then I'm going to go on the API, I'm going to go on data, and I'm going to render the post. So you can see we're now rendering the post beautifully. And then over here, I can add an H1. H1 is reserved for the titles, for the headings, has to do with SEO purposes as well. So I'm going to now go in here, and the H1 will just be mapped with the text that's in the H1 to the API data, to the title of the post from our database. And now, because it is the H1, we want to style it a little bit different. So I'm going to give this a weight of 700 and a size of 2 rem, just like this. And then we're going to give this a gap of 1 rem. Now what we're going to see is that it is beautifully responsive. That is beautiful. And as you can see, it nicely adjusts. Look at that. Now, it is kind of funky on mobile, so to make this image a little bit more responsive, we can go inside of here and we can add a minimum height of 10 rem if we want, right? So it adjusts, and a maximum height of 25 rem, for example. So if it's a very small screen, it's like this, and then it nicely fits in, right? So this is kind of like how you build this responsiveness in Nordcraft, by just, looking at how the layout should be. So now we have this very basic blog post that looks beautiful, and out of the box, because the text directly is linked to the API data, and the API has auto fetch on, and it has server-side fetching on, it's automatically server-side rendering the content now. So if I open the page, we can take a look at that. You see, it beautifully loads this page dynamically. But if I view the page source, we can see that the page source, if I'm just going to wrap this, we will see that the page source HTML here actually includes the text coming from our backend. So as you can see, we're server-side rendering this text. The website is being delivered with this dynamic text already inserted, which is very important because this will now allow us to, to have the scrape by Google. Now, having this text on the page being dynamically rendered is as important as making sure that you have the correct meta tags. Now we need to set them up, and we can do them dynamically as well. So I did ask Dia what the most important tags were. Obviously it's the title of the page, so let's start with that and make those dynamic as well, because now if I just open this page here, you will see it says untitled. So we need to make this title also dynamic. So let's go on the page and we can make all of this dynamically now. Now we need to upgrade to unlock those, but I'm just going to set this up and then you can do this on an upgraded account. So the title here needs to be, the title of the blog post. So we can just link this. And then the language, I'm just going to hard code this for now, but you could adjust this. The description, what I'm just going to do for the description, I'm going to take the blog post data, just like this, the post, and I'm going to do the take filter, and I'm going to take the first 100 characters and I'm going to concatenate that, and I'm going to add period, period, period. Now you probably want to have a separate description in the database, but this is just, you know, for illustrational purposes. And now we can add custom meta tags. So let's take a look what it suggests. We should do name description. We already are doing that. Prevents duplicate content related by specifying the link. We don't necessarily need that, but we want some open graph tags for social sharing. They make it really nice. So we have OG title. We should probably set that up. So that's a property. So let's expand that here so it's easier for you to see. So we need to do a property of OG title. So the way you do this in Nordcraft is you're going to go here on property and you're going to type in OG title for open graph. And then inside of here, the open graph title will be fx, and you will take this data from the API. So we're going to put the title inside of here. And then we're going to add another one. That will be another property. Let's take a look at the next one. The next one will be open graph description. So we're just setting up what we already have set up. I'm just going to paste this, enter. Let's actually copy the formula that I already have for the other description. And I'm just going to go on fx and I'm just going to paste this, just like this. Now I'm going to go to the next one and I do open graph image. This lets us actually set the dynamic image. Pretty cool. So let's go back inside of here. Let's go on property. Let's do open graph image. And now I can set the image. So I go on API, I will go on data, and I will go on the image and take the URL. That'll set the image, just like that. And they are all also server-side rendered. The open graph URL, that can just be the current URL of the page. We need to build it because the current URL is not necessarily happening server-side rendered. So we would need to add another meta tag. We would do another property. I would do OG URL. And then I'm going to do concatenate, because now I need to take my production URL and I would need to spin this up with the dynamic tag. So assume this would be the production URL. I'm going to remove the dynamic path. I'm going to concatenate now the dynamic slug onto it, so we're sending to the browsers that this would be the URL that they should index, right? Beautiful. And now we need to set up Twitter. So we can do, the content would be summary large item. So we need to do the Twitter card as a name, not as a property. So we will do, we will add a meta tag for Twitter. Or is it still Twitter? Like, I think they keep it at Twitter. We may need to do X tags and update the video, but let's do name. I'm going to do open graph Twitter card. And now the value will need to be summary large image, right? So we're going to copy that, paste this hard-coded inside of here. Let's add that meta tag here. Now we probably won't have that server-side render because they want us to pay, but I'm not paying because I'm doing those videos here. But let's just copy this. This is just my video account. Should have done it on my paid one actually. And let's put the name. Let's paste this inside of here. And now we're going to link it with the title. So we're going on APIs, we're going on data, and we're linking it with the title. Perfect. Now we're adding another meta tag, a name tag. And now I'm going to get the description. So we're copying that. And now we're going to go inside of Nordcraft, paste that, go on FX. And now I'm actually just taking the description that we have set up right inside of here. So I'm just going to paste this just like this. And now we're going to add another name tag here. And we are going to do the Twitter image, and that will let us set the image URL. So I'm going to paste this. And now I'm going to go to the API data. I'm taking the data, I'm taking the image, I'm taking the URL, just like this. And then I'm going to go and we can do tell search engines whether to index the page and follow links. Yeah, so let's do the robots. Let's set that up. So let's add that. It's a name tag, right? It's a name tag. Yes. So, and the value, the name will be robots. And then we need to just paste the value in here. And the content will be index follow for the robots. So it sets up all the SEO and all that beautifully for us here. So now we have viewport tag for mobile friendliness, ensure your block is responsive, a meta tag name viewport. So let's put that inside of here. name, viewport, and then we need to put the value inside of here, content width scale 1. Beautiful. And then those are all the important custom meta tags. You can do more depending on if you're news site or not. There's some script that you can put with Google News to be indexed for Google News. If you want to learn more about those things, take a look at my community, nocodeprocode.com. We talk about setting more of those complex stuff up. If that's something that interests you, if you need help in building those things, take a look at our office hours. We have them every day during the week, the work week. That may be something that interests you. But let's get back to the setup. So as you can see, we're setting up those meta tags. I think I need to upgrade to fully unlock them, upgrade to enable Open Graph meta tags. So we won't be able to see the Open Graph meta tags, but let's try opening this page here. Let's take a look at the page source, and we should at least see the other meta tags here. So let's go on View Page Source. And as you can see now, we're looking at the meta tags, right? So we have the meta tags. And it's interesting, it doesn't seem like Nordcraft necessarily is enforcing those meta tags, at least for Open Graph image. It doesn't do, no, it also does Open Graph title. So they say they don't afford that you need to have a paid account, but from what I'm looking at, it doesn't seem like they're doing it. But you need the paid account anyway if you want a custom domain. So as you can see, it does give us all those meta tags that can be then crawled by the search engine. And then of course you have the content right inside of here in the HTML that is also important for server-side rendering. So you get server-side rendering for the content that is loaded, very important, and you get server-side rendering for all those meta tags. Now, one thing to watch out for, let's say you have rich text. What people like to do is they like to go to the package store, they like to look for markdown block or something, or the HTML block, and they want to use those because it lets them render images and formatted text and all that. But watch out, they are not using server-side rendering. They are using set inner HTML. If you're cloning this package and taking a look at the underlying structure with the formatting one, you will see that it loads this markdown action. At this markdown action, it's parsing the markdown, but essentially what it's doing is it's doing this client-side. So this code of setting it and rendering it is doing it client-side. So this will not run server-side, right? And if you take a look at the HTML one, if you just look at the HTML tag here in the package, so the HTML block, and you take a look on the HTML block and you try to clone that, you will see that it runs client-side JavaScript. So using those blocks will not be good for SEO because that code executes after the page is loaded. As you can see, what they're doing here is they're getting the element and they're setting inner HTML, which is not good for SEO at all. So please don't use those for things that need good SEO. If you want to have good SEO, what you need to do is you need to dynamically render the elements. So you would need to build a repeat list essentially that's looping over a list of formatted elements to then render them dynamically, which is a little bit of work. If you want help with that, take a look at nocodeprocode.com. We have templates for that inside of the community for formatted text and all those things. But if you also take a look at docs.nordcraft.com, they also have a free guide on there that will help you in setting this up. If you go to guides here, right? And so you don't have to pay me to do that. Like you can just go to the Dato CMS and you will see that there's a free Nordcraft template for the same thing that I would charge you money for. So that's also something to consider. You can get that template right inside of here with a pre-made blog post where if you go to the pages here on the blog article, what essentially Lucas did, he did a great job in building that. He has this rich text element essentially, which is a repeat list and it's iterating over JSON here, right? A paragraph with multiple child elements that have marks and all those things. So essentially you have to turn your HTML into JSON and then you can render this on a list with all kinds of different HTML blocks. If you take a look at that, you see he has dozens of elements inside of here that all get conditionally rendered to provide this formatting. So definitely check that out. It's free. If you want to use my paid templates in my community, you can definitely do that as well, but it is available for free also using Nordcraft's documentation and using their templates. You also have, if you start a new Nordcraft project, the Nord CMS template, I think they called it, or Nordcraft blog template, which also gives you that nicely set up for Contentful. So keep that in mind. But this is essentially in a nutshell how you set up server-side rendering inside of Nordcraft. And if you want some help in setting this up with our daily office hours, take a look at nocodeproco.com, where we talk all about Nordcraft and how to set those things up. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate that, and see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Take care. Bye.